Hello, Ron and Zach here. I'm Ron.
I'm Zach.
We're from Widetrack, and we are starting a new thing here today. We want to just have some musical discussions and have you guys be part of them. And
Yes.
what are you thinking, Zach?
I'm thinking we kick this thing off and we get to the juicy bits. Really, the goal of this is to try and, get some back and forth going. If there's any questions, I suppose relating to the band at all or whatever else, or discussions of topic you think would be interesting to take part in. Interested in all that sort of stuff. So, getting started here, we'd like to start off with kind of a basic update of the band and how everything's going, and little bits happened since we last got with you guys. We've began writing and recording a little bit more, and we've been taking into consideration how we're going to be playing live in the upcoming new year, and much more specific information to come, but in terms of general things, that's what's been going on.
Yeah, we want to just send out a lot of appreciation and thanks to all of you who have shared and listened to and purchased our new album, Widetrack 3. It's a special album for us. It was quite a break between our last one and this one, and but that worked out in our favor because we were able to get Zach on this new one, and we started recording it right around the time when Zach started getting into music and stuff, and so
I'll always say it, but I look back at all that stuff and wish I could play it better, because it's remarkable how much I feel like I could do it more justice or whatever, but it's all part of it.
Yeah, that's welcome to music.
Well, of course.
You're always going to look back and say, oh God, if I could do that now, or if I could not do that now, I would go back, but hindsight's 20/20, as they say, and but we are really excited about the new songs. This is
we'll have, starting January, date unknown, but that's when, by the end of January, of course, in 2019, we will have a new song to show all of you, and we very much look forward to that, where, of course, we thought that the jump between Widetrack 2 and 3 was big, but I think both of us are in agreement that the jump between Widetrack 3 and 4, or is it Widetrack 4, is even greater. So we really look forward to you guys hearing this stuff.
That would be something that would be interesting to hear from you guys out there on is, should we continue our tradition with the Roman numerals?
My whole thought on that is, if we go past Widetrack 4, it's gonna be the thing. It's like Widetrack 10's gonna exist if we make 10 albums,
Yeah.
And that's a big commitment. But I think it's a very democratic way of introducing all your songs. There's no title track that gets more recognition than all the other ones. Kind of reminds me of how Tool won a Grammy for Anima, which is a great song, but really out of all the songs on that album, I think that there's plenty more that are Grammy worthy. Just saying, though. So
I agree with that. Yeah. If any song on that album, I would say 46 and 2 would be the one to give them a Grammy for off that album. But everybody's got their own personal...
Just kind of a little thing that we like to keep in mind. Or it's not really my decision, but, kind of introducing all the songs in a equal way, rather than saying, all right, here's this song and its little accompanying bits, Yeah.
Well, it's been interesting with... as we started writing songs together, this is the first time I've ever had a co-writer in Widetrack.
Yeah, me too.
but it's cool because as you know, Zach has hit the age. You know, he started playing with us at the end of. He was almost 13 at the time.
I was like a month before, so
yeah,
you
so
call it 13, I suppose.
So yeah, right at the teenage mark, he started playing and he started discovering all these bands, and he's just soaking it all in. And so a year later, we started working on new songs, and here we are with a bunch of new ideas. And for me, it's been, hey, you take over on guitar and bass, and I'll do the drums and vocals. And so we've got quite a few things worked up, but it's been exciting because I've been trying to let his inspiration guide the direction. And so there's a lot of cool bands he's been listening to, and he's got a fresh take on this stuff, and I think it really is reflected in the music. But anyhow, that's kind of what we wanted to talk about a little bit, was the inspiration behind writing music. And you know, right now, as far as our band is concerned, the main writing team is Zach and myself. And you know, we've got Brian Burleson as lead guitar player, who we present the songs to, and he records his ideas.
There's a total other dynamic to them. It's definitely not complete without the work of Brian.
Yeah,
so
it's definitely something that we have to kind of, you know, do in stages, because Zach and I spend so much more time together than the three of us are able to. So whenever we're together, if we got any free time at all, we're writing and recording new ideas, and so it's just, for us, it's the most efficient way at this point. And you know, and then obviously live, we can bring in other musicians for playing this music live, and in the effort to eventually have a group of 4 or 5 individuals that are all contributing. But at this stage right now, it's just, this is how it's working with us. It's just the two of us writing and recording the initial ideas. But as far as that goes, Zach, you want to talk about some of the things that have inspired you as a player, and how that's informed the direction of what you're doing?
So, a pretty interesting thing. We one of the very first, well, one of the earlier influences episodes that we did was with a marvelous bass player named Gunther Capelli, I believe is how you say his last name. But I remember asking him about his influences, you know, as per the name of the show. And he said that a lot of them were mainly local influences, like the people that were around him in the areas that he was playing in. And at the time, I was still getting into bands like Rush and Yes, and they hadn't really sank in, and I was still being super analytical about all this stuff. And it was, you know, like, how can you not say that about these certain types of bands? And now that I've had more time to digest all of these, you know, initial influences, I can definitely agree. I see the things that people do in a local sense, and it's remarkable. It's way more than you get from a lot of bands, because it's just, you know, certain ideas that you won't find anywhere else other than in local bands. And you know, I think a lot of inspiration for this newer stuff has come from trying to mesh the two worlds of, I guess, the known and the unknown of music and instrumentation together to try and make something a little more original than other things, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. That's long been a very major driving force for me personally, is the idea that you know, growing up with rock radio, but also being in bands, you know, you're listening to stuff on the radio, and there's, like I've always said, I love the stuff that played in my generation of, you know, anything from Zeppelin to Soundgarden to Black Sabbath to Radiohead, and you know, that's my favorite music still. But there's a lot of independent bands that I've come across that, yeah, they're in the rock realm, but you watch these bands and you kind of start getting a wider perception of things, where it's like, wow, this music is really unique, and I can't see it fitting in any of the commercial radio formats, but damn, it's great stuff. And you know, I think one of the axes I've always grinded is the fact that when you're trying to, when commerce gets involved in art, the effort becomes to get as wide of an audience, as big of an audience as possible. You know, it's not so niche oriented, it's lowest common denominator. So the record companies, and without going on a big tangent about it, the record companies just
they
want
do their best to
they want
sell
things generic, they want things familiar, they want things that have sold already. And so but the irony is, the bands that really persevere are the ones that come out and
re-innovate that type of
they
mindset.
They stand against that. And the last big movement that happened in was the Seattle explosion and the alternative explosion in the early mid-90s, when you had Nirvana, Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, Alice in Chains, Smashing Pumpkins.
It was a complete bounce back from
Rage Against the Machine.
You know,
all these bands came out and they just redefined, you know, at the time the radio was playing, radio and MTV was playing all this hair metal stuff, and these bands came, or they came out and they said, we want to be the antithesis of that. We want to fight against this overblown,
picture perfect, sort of
get it back to the
carved
raw
out of granite
heart and soul of just blood, sweat, and tears on stage, and it was a really big movement, and there hasn't been
anything as substantial, but you know, it's
but the music business is redefined now. It's not like, now we have the internet, and now bands have the ability to access large groups of people, and it brings the power back to the bands now, because
I mean, people, you know, like us, there's no real way we'd be able to get our music out to as many people as we have to you guys if we didn't have something like you know, the internet and the services that people use to market music with it. And so I guess it's really just a whole change in dynamic for things like record companies and music, because it's becoming a lot more personal now, with playlists being the most popular form of listening to music. At least I would think so, besides maybe singles, but you don't really see people having to tank through an entire album. If, you know, they only like 3 songs off of it, they can just pick and choose, and I really do think that's the best case scenario. I mean, if it does the artist any injustice, then I really suppose that it's nothing they can do about it. It's the will of whoever's listening to decide what type of, you know, benefit they want to get out of what they're listening to, and if that doesn't involve listening to an hour of the same band at the same time period, then so be it.
It really puts it on the bands to make every song count, and we, you know. But the other thing too is that now that we're in this age of internet connecting between bands and fans, we can be so ourselves. And the people that are into that, we have this wide net, and we cast it and say unapologetically, this is what we do, and if you like it, come on in, and if you don't, that's fine. But we don't have to compromise to please a radio or a record company and radio formats. We can basically say, hey, we have our own little tribe here, and
you know, I totally feel like we're missing out on something, and that is that there may be people that do not know what this sort of push away of record companies, where that comes from. And you hear a lot of people that say, I mean, just about everyone will tell you even now that, well, if you want to make it in music, you have to just get noticed by somebody and get a record deal. And the only way to do that is to get lucky and play for more people and do things for free, or do things at your own cost just to get exposure so that you might get noticed by a record company. And this is really not the case. And even when it is, even when people do get noticed by record companies, it is not something that ends happily. A lot of the times, a person's ownership and connection with their music is lost during the action of accepting a record deal. When the record company owns your songs, they decide what they do with them, and if you would like them for yourself to own, and maybe you want to do something that the record company would find disagreeable with their business, then you aren't able to. And this, among other things, among the amounts of money that people have been lost out on due to royalties and just the shady nature of it all, it's really been the solidifying staple since the internet's come out. It's been that record companies are on a decline now, and rightfully so. So, all this kind of persuasion, or I guess leaning towards one side or the other, is really not out of any sort of ego or wanting to do it all ourselves. It's that the fact that we value our music in a way that we would not like to sell it off to people for money, or we would not like to be under anyone else's sort of guiding hand with our music, because that's a lot of what artists say they struggle with, is not being able to do what they really feel and being stuck in this loop of something that makes them unhappy and something that keeps music in this kind of stalemate.
Yeah, pursuing this a music career, it's one thing if music in any kind of form of outlet is great. If, hey, let's just get some buddies together and play, and it's just going to stay in the basement, and maybe we'll do an occasional gig, but we're not trying to make any sort of impact beyond just a few close friends or whatever. That's great.
I mean, like Bob Ross always said with painting, you just do whatever makes you happy. That's what it's all about.
But for any kind of longevity with, if you want to do music for us, it's like, wouldn't this be cool to have this be our main job? That's been that balanced with creating music that we are just uncompromisingly excited about, and it really moves us, that we feel like, okay, if I wanted to create music that doesn't exist, here's what it would be, influenced by all these things that we have our own personal little amalgamation of bands in our brains and hearts. Then we put out this, and we're just ecstatic about it, and it just stands to reason that there's going to be some people out there, enough that would enable us to focus on doing that with our lives.
Provide them a service with
and so
music, I suppose.
I think at that point it really does become about not compromising. That's such a wonderful thing to have be the case, because I grew up in the time when you did have to pursue a record deal, and that was the only way to get access to large numbers of people. And so record companies, my band and I moved out to LA, and we went to school out there, and we started playing out in LA, and I immediately, we were like this weird kind of progressive hard rock band in a time when hair metal and Guns N' Roses were just starting out, and we just didn't fit in. All the scenes that were succeeding were really cliquey, and we didn't fit in any one of those things, and the record companies didn't want to have anything to do with us. That whole scene out there just chewed us up and spit us out. It was a big eye opener, and so we were very discouraged, and that band eventually imploded and broke up. And so years later, we're in this situation, and the lesson is just that basic lesson that you learn in life. Just be yourself.
And it's like,
and
some
be
of those
yourself.
things,
Be yourself bravely.
Yeah, some of these things, it's like they don't only go for music; they go for life as well. It's like, no matter what you're doing, even if you don't think it has anything to do with a personal aspect, it's don't be afraid to kind of push the expectations of whatever you decide to do. Don't be afraid to be truly great at something. I mean, even if it's at the expense of work or at the expense of doing all that work for nothing. It's never for nothing. If you feel that you've gained something, which undoubtedly that much work you have. And I'm really happy about the way that music is today. I mean, I know that plenty of people will say Spotify and streaming services and stuff like that are a detriment to music, and people who make albums are just being forgotten. And it's all fair points, but at the same time, the almost entirety of the world's sum of music at your fingertips whenever you want. It's remarkable. I know I've said that plenty of times, but it's truly amazing. There is nothing that you cannot find. I mean, past a certain point, you have everything. Any genre you're feeling, it's like you're in the biggest record store in the world, and it's at the click of a button and it fits in your pocket. I really don't see any downsides with this. If you want to listen to albums all the way through, you can. If you want to listen to things within whatever genre by an artist, you can do all that. There's no real restrictions from any of this stuff, but it's this type of diverse playlist oriented music scene has kind of allowed more bands to be original, and now you see bands that purposely break the expectations of the genres, and that's what ends up working. Like bands like Radiohead. I mean, sure, they fit into the alternative rock genre, but even after they graduated from that stuff and began doing things that were totally different and outlandish, they're still revered as some of the greatest musicians and one of the greatest bands ever, even past all their stuff that would fit into a kind of clique. And so, I think that it's really just a good thing for music, that the value of being original in yourself and different is being brought to light and being, praised rather than shunned.
That's a really good point. It's one of the things I've learned as I try to connect with people online to kind of present our music to them, is I'll kind of ask people, have some conversations with people about what they're into, and with the basic premise being, well, they like rock music. And so I'll ask people, hey, what kind of stuff are you into? And a lot of times they'll say bands that we don't even listen to, but...
Or, even more of the times they'll say, I like everything. And it's like, of course, because there's so much available.
Yeah, and that's kind of like what I was getting at, is like, so I'll say, well, hey, that's cool, and here's what our music is kind of like this or that. I can send you some stuff, and then I get it to people, and when I get positive feedback, it just reinforces the idea in my mind of that music is it's such a specific thing, and you know, even if someone says, hey, I like such and such band, and it's a band you don't like at all, don't discount that person as being someone who wouldn't be a fan of what you're doing, because everybody's got these quirky taste things. There's no accounting for taste, as they say.
You know, sometimes you'll feel like this natural sort of inclination to like a certain type of music, and you know, of course, I can say that, you know, being my musician father's son, it's not like I've ever tried to, you know, it's not like I'm completely oblivious to the fact that, yeah, we probably like a lot of the same music, because, you know, I've listened to a lot of the same bands that he's listened to, and, you know, it's not out of pure chance, I should say, but at the same time, I've really tried to discredit the type of stuff, and, you know, the stuff that I don't really enjoy listening to, you know, I can still find ways to respect it, but I don't have to listen to it. But, you know, it's like, if you ever feel like you owe a musician, or you know, a band or an artist something, you're not doing yourself any favors, or even them, you know. It's like,
oh gosh, we even feel that way about some of our favorite bands. It's like no band gets a unconditional blanket, I love everything you do. It's
yeah,
like
it's
there's
like,
plenty of songs by my very favorite artists that I will never listen to.
if you don't like the newest album that your favorite band put out, don't like that album.
Yeah,
you know, it's like,
you know, you check out the next one. I mean, Rush was a band for me that they did the Tom Sawyer stuff, and maybe, you know, an album beyond that, and I remember waiting. Every time Rush released an album, I bought it, and I love those guys. I think they are like, they're all tight buddies, and their work ethic and their, you know,
their music is always, you know,
it's always, they're meaningful and all that stuff. But
creative,
I didn't like their music a lot for a long time. They would just put out an album, and I would just next, and then occasionally I liked a song or two. But I still really liked what they represented to me as musicians and artists, and so I always supported them, and I would still go to see them live, and they would play their older music, and I would get satisfaction from that. But yeah, there's something to be said, and I think that's more conducive to this age of playlists, where you can,
you know, I feel like people get sympathy when they put a song on a playlist, you know, like they see that song that's been on there since like day one, and they liked it when they had it on their iPod, and they listened to that and 2 other songs on repeat for a 10-hour road trip. And, you know, they have it on this playlist, and, you know, they land on it, and they find they keep skipping over it, yet when they go to take it off, they say, oh, I can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I think it's weird. It's like, I get it's a sentimental thing, but is that song ever really gonna, like, are you doing yourself or the song any favors by, you know, holding on to it sentimentally? You know, I think it's like, you want to do everything that you can to grow your musical tastes, and sometimes, you know, that involves just being true to what you feel, and say, you know, if I feel like listening to this music that I told everybody I didn't like, or if I feel like not listening to this music that I've always listened to, then so be it. You know, I think that evolving your musical tastes and just cycling through so many different genres and so many different artists is only good, because you're always going to be you. But the more sort of ingredients you put into this, you know, inspiration soup, you know, contrary to real cooking, the better that your soup is going to be, you know.
Yeah, that's interesting. It makes me think of, as getting back to the new songs that we're working on, the other component to what you're saying is artists, you know, there's a cycle of you're building up your influence, you're taking things in, you're checking out bands, you're reading, you're watching movies, you're whatever artistic thing fuels your inspiration, and you fill up with that stuff, and then you express it. It's like an inhale, exhale, and part of that inhaling is that you say, okay, you have to You have to set your ego aside and say, I have blind spots, and I'm ignorant to some good stuff that's out there, and maybe some of it will go over my head when I first listen to it. I mean, you mentioned Radiohead. I remember when Radiohead was really blown up, and I just didn't get it. I was just like, what is it with these guys? I wasn't a fan of Creep, and then OK Computer and all this stuff came out, and I bought it. I tried liking it, and I said, I guess I had enough faith in the idea that I didn't know everything, that I kept giving them a chance. And finally, Amnesiac came out, and I was just like, oh, wow. I'm so glad that I fought through this initial impatience, I guess is what it is. And it really teaches you to, let songs kind of sneak up on you, let them seep into your consciousness, and then you can, maybe say, well, that's just, I don't like. I mean, there's bands I've done that with, and it doesn't matter how many times I give them a try. I'm just like, yep, I just don't.
It's like, even if you're trying to be yourself, and you feel like you want to give these guys a chance, and you feel like that, you just need to give them a little bit more. It's also one of those things where it's like, don't be afraid to say, I'm not really into moving outside of this little comfort zone for now. I think I'm still enjoying the stuff that I've always known, and that's totally fine too. It's like, you don't want to ever use music as like a sense of identity, like to fit in with even, another part of yourself. Like if you hang out with people that listen to some type of music, it doesn't really mean you have to listen to it. There's always other ways to connect with people and connect with ideas. So, it's really just all comes down to being truthful to what you like. And the best ways to write music and to be inspired by music and to be inspired and create anything are to kind of go with your gut sometimes, but, also go down the paths that you think you might know the answers to, or give things a try sometimes, because it could always result in something totally new and original in today's standards, which is increasingly difficult. There are so many insanely original people, so being yourself does not hurt.
Yeah, it's funny. You get into the idea of originality, and it's funny because it's like you could take a festival, like let's say the Warped Festival, or Lollapalooza would be a better example for me to give, and you've got all these metal bands, and this is very subjective, so this is just my take on it. Everybody's got their own take on this, but you've got all these metal bands, and Tool is one of them. Personally, for me, I would say Tool fits in with this landscape, but they're separate from it. They're not just metal, but they can kind of slip in to these different, these bills that are put on these festivals, and they can play with the standard metal bands, but then they also have other elements to it too. So I guess my point with that is, like, certain artists they do have a defining genre that they're marketed in, but a lot of times for us,
the undertones, the parts that
they transcend that. Like I think all our favorite bands like Tool and Soundgarden, Queens of the Stone Age, Radiohead, the Mars Volta, these bands, they are just so much more than a genre. But they do have what we regard as progressive elements, and when we talk about progressive, we're not talking about like, let's play our instruments as fast and technical as possible. I mean, there's definitely a cliche of progressive rock that we don't want anything to do with, but we do like the idea of higher consciousness and reaching beyond where you are.
I think a lot of
evolving
it in
musically.
Music is, there's two different ways that I've really seen that people write music, and then there's in between, which one of the ways is like, just gonna go for it, feel it, don't care, not worried about, 4 chords, 3 chords, and the truth, whatever type of outlook you want to give it. And the other one is totally compositional outlook, and it's like, I'm going to put effort in this, and I want it to be something that's, great and up to my standards, and I'm not going to second guess myself, but I want to put as much effort as this conception deserves, and I think classical composers do that, and I don't think that progressive really means that you compose everything like your Mozart or whatever, but it's far from kind of the 3-4 chords and the truth, because it's all been really done before, and there's plenty of songs that are absolutely splendid. They're just a few chords or a really simple idea, but I think with progressive rock or whatever else, the defining factor isn't the cliche of progressive music, but it's just the idea that you put this amount of effort into moving forward with your music. You change things, you go beyond what's expected of bands of your genre. Like sometimes we'll be listening to something and it'll be like jazz or whatever, and we'll say, oh dude, that's so prog, because it really is. It fits all these just giant very vague ideas of what we believe progressive rock to be, and we really hope that that type of outlook is given to the genre name rather than the cliches that it's been associated with.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think about it, as I mentioned, the Mars Volta, and a lot of their roots are punk rock, and they came out and basically said, we're gonna take our punk rock roots and our progressive rock roots and put them together in one band. And this was like an unheard of, like, a punk rock and progressive rock are two factions of music that never got along. You would always hear punk rockers criticize progressive rockers and vice versa. And to see a band kind of take their own, what they like about each of those things, I think that is the essence of it all. Because, for us, it's like, okay, and especially, Zach's learning music at this time, and he's evolving as a musician, and a lot of that is just taken in, and this never ends. You're taking in stuff from all these different genres. Like we listen to jazz sometimes, and it's like, well, a lot of people say, well, you can't apply that to what you do, but it's like, yeah, but you don't know what I'm getting out of that. There's something in that I hear that I do believe I can apply to what I do. And then there's other styles, like for me personally, I will hear certain styles of music, and I don't like to never say it never, but I can pretty much assure everybody I'm not ever going to be influenced by country music. There's certain styles of music I can't tolerate at all in my own listening diet. They just repel me. And when I was younger, I used to apologize. I used to feel apologetic for, I need to be way more open-minded and stuff, but it's very much like food. I mean, it's like there's certain foods that will just make you gag, and it doesn't matter how much you try to be open-minded about them and try them, they just don't sit well with you. And like I said, I never say never, but those things inform the stuff that we write as well, where you're saying, I so don't want to be that I want to be this. And maybe that sounds a bit reactive, but it all plays
to just being yourself.
Yeah,
again,
just being yourself, and saying, okay, I don't know it all, and I never will. This is a journey. We're all works in progress, but that is I think our definition of progressive music is we're works in progress. That's what it means to us. So with this new album, we have just this big stew of
local
music,
out there,
musical
every sort of
influence that has informed this new music, and it's been really surprising to hear what's been coming out. The new music that we've been working on since Zach has taken up the guitar, and I, typically I was writing most of all the music on guitar or whatever, but I basically given the guitar to him this time around and said, okay, you can play guitar better than me, so I think that will expand our sound a lot, and I can really I want to really focus on my lyrics this time around and my singing and my drumming, just fitting it with what I'll have the ability to get those ideas a little more concrete. And so Zach is finding that marriage between the guitar, and then he's putting bass lines along with the guitar, or vice versa. If he comes up with a bass line, he'll have a guitar part to put
I think a lot of the reason that we think this music is so much more advanced is that all of us aren't really being spread so thin. We're all playing more of an equal role, or at least my father and I are playing an equal role in this writing, covering the harmony instruments and then covering the rhythm instruments and the lyrics. It's pretty fair trade-off, I'd say. 2 for 2. And as opposed to me just writing bass and, leaving it at that, leaving everything else the way it was, I think that this has become so many leaps and bounds better because we've been able to really pinpoint the things that we value in writing music, and like, by all means, if I come up with something on drums, or my dad comes up with something on guitar or bass, then there's no rules or anything like that. But
that's a very satisfying aspect of it, is even within the same song, it'll be like, this section right here, let me see the guitar, and I'll put a little thing down, and he'll, it's very interchangeable, and
it's
and just having somebody to kind of give you a little pushback or a little bit of support.
So
one or the other. It's like if
both of them work the same way. When you're right about something, you'll know it for sure, rather than ever thinking, I don't know. Because if your first idea doesn't work and the second idea is, yes, that's the one, then you don't got to worry about that or get discouraged about that first one.
Yeah, or maybe one guy will catch, oh, there's a note there that's funny or something like that, and it's like, oh wow, I didn't catch that, or hey, like today when you said, hey, try a different note in this one spot right here. And that's, for me in the past, that was always something that I just didn't have. It was just myself writing, and that has never been the ideal situation. I've always wanted to have a writing partnership in Widetrack, and it's just, but for one reason or another, never happened until now. But
a very big influence of mine, the guitarist and composer for many acts, but my favorite being the Mars Volta, Omar Rodriguez Lopez, has expressed his value of working in collaborations with other people. And I wouldn't do him any justice by saying it, but seeing somebody that you really look up to and are influenced by talk about the value of something that you almost already knew deep down, it really gives me a whole new light on the true value of working together, and I've got no doubts in my mind that there's no other way to go. I've of course I write little ideas on my own, but there is nothing quite like writing with another person.
Yeah, there's definitely, and getting a grip on the studio, our recording gear and our video gear and stuff. It's like all these tools enable us to get idea to execution that as quick as possible, and to hear it in the flesh, so to speak. So it's as the better we get at this process, the more we are self-actualizing our music in a truer and truer form. I think that's the idea. I know that, like, this time around, I really, as I said, Zach and I talked about the approach on this next stuff, and it's it wasn't like any big conversation. It was like let's just write, and when we're writing, let's pursue the ideas that really excite us. And but I did say that, okay, I can do better with my lyrics. That's an area that I really want to improve on, because I think that there's certain aspects of my lyric writing that I can tap into.
Things left unsaid, I suppose.
Truer and truer things, and it's all about getting more and more congruent with what's really inside of you. And sometimes you'll write things, and then you'll kind of step back from it and look at it and say, that just seems like bullshit. That just seems like I just tried to write something.
I
Whereas
think
other times you'll be inspired and you'll come out with something, you'll be like, wow, where did that come from? And those are the moments that we're chasing, is those moments where you feel the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. That's always the only gauge, is like, do you get that feeling of ooh, and so that's what for me, Zach's doing more of the guitar is enabling me to say, cool, man, you got that job, a big hunk of that job that I used to have to do, and now I can get over here on the lyrics and really start.
I think a big part of all of this is, pursuing a lyrical truth, or a perfect guitar part, or a perfect song, is an endeavor to no end. You're never gonna write a perfect song. You're never gonna do anything that will be absolutely complete and final when you're talking about art and expression and all that, because it is really a process. And sometimes having these ideas, these concepts of perfection and the real truth and the real way that I can express myself, or is more of something to aim at than something to truly work towards getting to an end of. It's like,
and a lot of it, and this is something that I don't want to say just because you're young, because this never ends either, but we all go through phases in life.
It's not just a phase, Dad.
But you know what I'm saying? It's like, okay, right? Like, you bring home a freaking saxophone a couple weeks ago, and you're just like, hey, man, I moved to try this instrument, and
that's a bit on the down low, though. If you're hearing a saxophone on the next Widetrack album, assume it wasn't me.
But that's the thing. It's like, there should be. That's what writing an album enables one to do, is to say, man, this is where my head is right now. This is where my heart is right now. And it's different. Like, I go back and I listen to the older Widetrack albums, and some of it I still connect with, and a lot of it I don't. It's just, I'm a different person. And my take on it is that I should be. I would hope I am 12 years later, that's I would hope to God I got some kind of thing out of my system, or that a revelation that I've had that would lead to this and this and that. But that's the exciting thing about this, is that there's always these songs that remain, like, throughout the decades or throughout the years. It's like, wow, this song still resonates with me, and so I guess that's part of what we're trying to build up, is a collection of songs that, okay, well, this album, I'm not going to love every song on this album a year from now, 6 months from now, 5 years from now, but some of them will remain, and those are the ones we add to the live set list as time goes on. As you got to make room for new things. There's certain ones that are older that you say, well, we will always probably play these, or as far as I can see. So, but we're coming on along.
Yeah, we'd like to thank you if you made it here. If you skipped to the end, cool, whatever. Hope you enjoyed that part. I hope it made sense.
We got one little last thing we want to do here, and we just want to reiterate. Send out a little word of encouragement to if you are pursuing an artistic venture, whether you're a musician or a writer or an artist.
Learn how to do as many things as you can by yourself. It's a very fulfilling experience, and it'll get you a lot more places than you think. But in addition to that,
believe in yourself. Believe in yourself. Don't apologize for what there's the most satisfying thing is that you create something, and even if you step back and say, what the hell? You are able to say, even though I say what the hell, this is exactly what I meant to say. And that's interesting. And it's a never ongoing process of self-discovery, self-expression, and so often artists or people who could have been artists, they feel like they have to apologize or they have to ask permission. Well, I don't know if I can't do this. I'm not worthy or whatever. That's bullshit. You are worthy. Get busy. Get on it. Do it. The world needs more of that.
You ever want to be motivated artistically? Gosh, man, Bob Ross. It's like, oh man, dude. Oh, I won't go on. He's what a legend. But in any case, we hope to be making these into podcasts as well as videos sometime soon. I think these would function a lot better. Having to have YouTube open all the time can be pretty big hassle for up to an hour. So we'll see what we can do about that type of stuff. But until then,
we'll see you next time. Keep on rocking.